Welcome to the FitnessFest Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia, and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. We are continuing in the world of yoga today. In this episode, we have Jenn Tarrant. She is a senior master trainer with YogaFit, and she's going to share her story today. So I'm excited to jump into it. Jenn, first, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Tyler. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. We're going to kick it off like we always do in the FitnessFest Podcast. Give us a little story on yourself, Jenn, how you kind of got into the industry and a little background information before you joined YogaFit.
Of course. So I really kind of fell backwards into the fitness industry. Many years ago, I was a runner and training for marathons and running, one every couple of years or so, and really loving that part of my fitness lifestyle. And a good friend of mine mentioned yoga and thought that maybe that would be a nice cross-training activity for me. And it would probably be really helpful for my body just in recovery and all of those great things to support all of my running. And I was super hesitant at first, but eventually did go to that first yoga class and absolutely loved it from the very first pose, and was very pleasantly surprised to realize that I had probably found something that I would love to compete with my running just as much. And so that was really how I kind of got started with yoga. And I was just amazed at how much better I felt, how much stronger I felt. I had less soreness overall and all of those things that you might imagine would happen adding yoga into a marathon training lifestyle. And so from there on out, I was for sure to keep it as part of my life. And it really just kind of grew from there as far as my interest in continuing to run, my interest in continuing yoga. And that was all in a time in my life where I was raising small children and doing all of those things from home. And so they were both really great outlets for me in that time in my life when, most of my days revolved around play dates and packing lunches and all kinds of fun things like that.
Nice. So was teaching yoga your first job within the industry?
Within the industry, yes, it was. That was my very first segue in. After I practiced yoga for a while, I knew that it was probably something I wanted to dive deeper into. I had been a teacher before. I taught in the public school system. And so teaching as far as the, mechanics of leading a group of people and communicating information was really familiar to me. And I loved this so much, and it had a lot more flexibility than teaching public school. And so I decided to take that journey into yoga teacher training and learn how to teach this new thing. And I fell in love with that just as much as the practice, and jumped in as soon as I was able to and finished with my training, and took my first job at my local community center and jumped in with a couple of classes a week. And that grew pretty quickly to a few classes a week there and at a local country club, and just kind of been doing that whole same thing ever since.
Nice. I can only imagine a joke that you have to have some type of good joke right now about from going from teaching in public schools to now teaching adults with yoga. There has to be one in there. I know there is, and maybe it'll come out later on. But I can only imagine though that the crossover with that, I feel like that is one of the main things with some instructors, if they're coming from PT over to group exercise, is that they're missing that public speaking part. They maybe have not had that type of interaction before, moving and engaging with large groups, and all of a sudden they're thrown in front of 20 people, 20 members, 30 members, however many that is, and and they freeze up a little bit. So I'm sure that transition was pretty good for you, right?
It actually did really help. You're right. And the types of classes I taught in public school, I was a high school choir teacher, so pretty large groups actually.
Yeah.
I definitely most of the time taught more students per class in high school than I do in yoga. So the group size, thankfully, was never really intimidating or anything that caused any hiccups for me. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, I like that. So now give us a little information how you got associated with YogaFit.
Absolutely. So when I very first decided, after taking those first yoga classes and really seeing how much it helped me and thinking, I might like to actually teach this, I started just doing some research online like you do and started researching schools. And I'm kind of a list maker and spreadsheet kind of girl. And so I made myself a spreadsheet of things that I liked about the different schools that I looked up. And as I did all of this research, it really became evident super quickly that YogaFit was the one that fit best for me. I really love YogaFit's approach about inclusivity and also emphasis on safety and alignment. And I also really appreciated the training model that at the time when I was first doing this, you almost had to travel to some exotic location to become a yoga teacher. And like I said, I had small children at home. And so that wasn't really available to me, but YogaFit's training model where you're able to take things in modules really worked for me because I could devote, a week at a time or a few days at a time to my training and then put those modules together to complete it all. And so between the philosophy behind the school and the approach combined with the flexibility of ability to train on my schedule and my budget made it the clear winner for me. And then after having trained with YogaFit, it was definitely the most natural place for me to jump in many years later and become a trainer for the school as well.
Very nice. Very nice. On our previous episode with Kim Gray, she educated me. I didn't know much about the differences in 200 hour, 500 hour, and also the training that went into that for an individual looking at these. Was that something that you looked at and like, wow, I like these different offerings? And on top of that, you felt like it could prepare you for teaching yoga on your first day?
Definitely. I didn't know a lot about the different levels of teacher training. I saw that when I was looking things up, but I knew I would obviously start at the beginning. And so I really just jumped in there and I took that first module as a standalone all by itself and thought, I'm just going to see if this is as good a fit as I think. And I took that first training and it absolutely was really beyond any expectations I could have had about how great of a fit it was and what the school teaches and stands for and all of those things. And so once I knew that, I knew for sure I was going to complete the rest of my training through YogaFit. And then just by being around the school and talking to other students, I began to realize, like, oh, okay, so this is a journey that has the potential for lots of growth. It's not just 200 hours of training. Like you mentioned, I could do 500 hours of training. Eventually, I was able to become a yoga therapist through the yoga therapy school from YogaFit as well. And the other thing I just love about what YogaFit offers is our specialty tracks. And so we're able to specialize in a number of different applications of yoga. And I really, really appreciate that because it helps to communicate in a really easy way to studios or fitness centers where my specialization lies. So we have the ability through YogaFit to specialize in trauma-informed yoga, things like mind, body, women's health, or holistic whole body health, even things like an Ayurvedic lifestyle coach and things like that. So I really love how we're able to showcase what we've learned in a way that's easy to understand. And so that really helped me out over the years, many times over when I was, applying to work at some new yoga studio, some new fitness center, and let them see exactly where all of my training lies.
I bet. Something that kind of came into my mind there, and I'm sure there's people listening in that are interested in yoga, and I'm sure that they're very similar to you they like to do their research and all that kind of good stuff. What were some of the things so you already mentioned that your mom, you had young kids at the time. What were some of the factors that when you were making your lists of XYZ certification, or what were those items that you're like, okay, this is a positive in my book. This is a positive that could help down the line. Were there things that really stuck out to you between all the offerings out there?
Definitely. One of the first things is I'm an extremely pragmatic, practical type of person. And so I loved that YogaFit offers very practical application ways to do yoga. It's very systematic even. This is the way we structure a yoga class from beginning to end. These are the places in the class where different types of poses fit the best. All of those types of things really, really worked well for me because I felt like even from that very first module, I knew what I was doing. I left that very first module knowing that I could safely lead people through an experience of a yoga class and not be just guessing. Like I had all the tools I needed right from the beginning. And so that very pragmatic approach really appealed to me. And then because of the kids at home, I knew I needed to not have to travel.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be gone for 6 weeks in Bali, as amazing as that sounds. And so I really needed something where I could take, 2 or 3 days here, 4 or 5 days there, and break it up into chunks so that I could arrange for childcare and I could take things at my own pace. Being a stay-at-home mom, I needed to mind where the dollars were going and when. And so it helped me to plan budget-wise too. Okay, I'm going to spend this much this month, and then in 2 or 3 months, I'm going to spend this much more. And it gave me a chance to save up and be smart and efficient with my finances too. And so both of those things were really big for me. And then I also really appreciated all of the thoughtfulness with how YogaFit's modules are divided up to make the journey through all of the courses in probably, I would say, an extremely easy way to understand, follow, and build from one to the next. And, with the modules being split up, we're able to read text ahead of time and do things ahead of time in preparation, which really enriched the entire educational experience. So I really liked all of those things, seemed very practical to me and really optimized my educational experience and my ability to even practice skills in between modules so that I could come to some form of mastery before I moved on to the next thing.
I bet. That sounds really nice, especially for instructors that are just getting going in the industry. I find that that's probably the biggest item that I see posted on social media, Facebook groups for different types of formats is they're asking about, I don't want to say a template, but really just a little bit of advice. Sometimes you just need a little bit of hand-holding, really, especially when you're getting into something new. And that's often what it takes is just a little bit of structure. And then as you gain a little bit of momentum, gain some courage, you start to explore more. And I like how you mentioned that they gave you information on what fits well in certain areas of a class, because if not, you're guessing. And sometimes some certifications, they miss that application piece. They miss the piece that the instructor, when they're in the classroom, when they got a full pack class, or they have somebody that needs a little extra attention, where do you go from here? So those are really great things to hear for a certification. And it's something that people listening, they should check it out. They should really go and check it out. So let's get to your journey now with yoga, learning more, growing. Did you have any mentors that kind of helped you along your way?
Definitely. Of course. I think, most of us probably kind of latch on and glean wisdom wherever we can. And I had the support of not other trainers at the time. They were my trainers. I was a student. Supportive trainers. I knew I could reach out whenever I had additional questions, but also even the support of other students. Back in the day when I was taking my yoga teacher training, Facebook wasn't quite as much of a thing. And so we communicated on a forum. We had a YogaFit forum. And that was a great place to get support from other students who were learning the same things I was. And we helped each other out a lot. All of that happens on social media now. And I think that our YogaFit community really is one of the most supportive and positive communities, probably the most supportive and positive community I'm on social media. And I just love how everyone's so willing to share ideas and help each other out. But I also had that type of support here locally with other teachers I knew, the people that I was learning yoga from and taking classes with in the midst of all of that were also so supportive and helpful and encouraging throughout my journey. And, getting to really learn from them. And so I have been, I think, very fortunate to have support in so many different ways as I've grown into a teacher and then grew into a trainer after that.
Yeah. Kim mentioned something very similar to that with the community with YogaFit, that a lot of individuals are willing to help each other grow and reach out. And she said that she even found that as she was moving on, past students would do the same to her. And it's almost like I'm trying to think, you paying it forward kind of. Yeah. You help one, you help the next, and you just keep paying it forward, which is great. And I just have to make a side comment about the forums, because I know what forums are because I do website development as well. And forums don't really exist anymore. So for someone to say forum, I was like, okay, that's a good one to hear on a podcast. But
definitely dating myself, I know.
But you are correct. With social media these days and communities online, a lot of them are just on Facebook groups or other things along that nature. But that's really great to hear about the community and how new instructors can come in, get that support, and grow, because I don't think you get that in many areas of the industry. If you're joining a new gym and you're teaching group X, maybe you'll find one instructor that's willing to help out, but it's rare in my opinion. And I think we need more of that in the industry, because it's not so much of, I will say that when you initially come in, sometimes it can be cutthroat. And I understand that mentality, that it's potentially taking food off your plate, or that you are taking business away if you're helping somebody. But if you're helping grow a gym, more members are coming in, more people are taking classes, they're talking about you. I always have thought that stuff, it comes back around and it helps in the long run. And you just got to understand that it's not going to immediately benefit you. And I know that that's my opinion on that, but that's one of the things that I noticed in both recordings I did it with you, Jen, and then also with Kim, was just this community within YogaFit sounds really nice.
Yeah. I mean, really, if any one of us is better, we're all better. And I really do believe that's true.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. So next question now, if we're talking about, if you had that crystal ball and you're rubbing that crystal ball and you're like, man, I wish I knew this when I entered the industry. What is that advice that you're like, man, this is solid? When I entered the industry back when, I'm not trying to make any guesses here on when you entered, but what was the advice that you wish you had when you started?
It's actually advice that I got, but it's also advice that can sometimes be a little bit difficult to follow. And that is to teach your own class. Whenever we try to teach like someone else, it doesn't land the same. It doesn't have the same effect, because each teacher hopefully is teaching from their own authenticity and their own style. And that's what really connects with people. I really think that it's amazing how many, since we're talking about yoga teachers there are out there, because each one connects with a different person or a different type of person. And so those times when I felt like I needed to teach like yoga teacher A or yoga teacher B because their classes were really popular, really and truly, the times when I tried to emulate someone else, the classes got smaller instead of bigger. And whenever I taught my class my way, it was amazing how they started to grow, because I was being true to me, which then really connected with the people who came to my class. And it's great for it to be different. It's not even just okay for our classes to be different. It's great when they're different, because that's what really creates a beautiful variety and lots of different opportunities for people to pick from.
I agree. I like that a lot. And as somebody that manages instructors, I often say that is be yourself. Let yourself come through in your class. Don't worry about how I want you to teach class, you teach it how you do. And I often tell my instructors how I will help them with the background stuff. Since it's a virtual gym, I will help all I can in that area, but I want them to teach it how they would, because that's why they're there. They are there to be themselves, and they have their own knowledge in whatever format they're teaching. So I don't try to restrict that, because it's a part of them. And the same thing applies to live as well. Be you. And I'll admit that I've had that same feeling as well, though, because I am more of I guess you could call it a technical instructor. When I ever taught boot camps, or when I would take or teach HIIT classes, I'm more of the instructor that is going over the mechanics, going around the whole time trying to help with technique, because that's what I really emphasize. Yeah. And so when I would try to do things that maybe a manager would suggest, it just didn't flow well. It didn't flow well with my interpretation of teaching, with cueing, with formatting a class. And I think it's spot on with what you were saying, with just being true to yourself. So I like that advice. And it's really something for new instructors as well. Just continue to do you, because it will come back around, and it just sometimes takes a little time. So that's a really good one there. With now instructing, and always got to bring this question up because it's relevant for the times. How did the pandemic maybe affect your business or your teachings over the last year?
Boy, that's a big one, Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just go with it. Changed everything for starters. Like most everyone, I'm sure I found that I was not teaching in person anymore, of course. All of that kind of went away within about, I would say, probably just a week or two from, when we all began to really realize how big of a deal this whole virus was. And then it was very interesting, though, after that, as we all kind of got our footing and started to understand, like, oh, okay, this is going to be more than a couple of weeks off. Mm-hmm. We, the local studio where I teach, which thankfully is right around the corner from my house, decided to start offering all of the classes as online classes. And so instead of going over to that little studio to teach class in person, I started going over there every few days to record classes in the studio all by myself. And so I found myself, immediately getting well versed on recording classes to be presented online. And a couple of the places where I taught just really kind of quit offering things altogether. And sadly, one of them ended up closing. And so those other opportunities really went away for me. And so I started offering my own classes online through Zoom, of course, like so many teachers. And that was an interesting road. I've started off thinking, well, I have no idea what people are going to be interested in taking online. So I came up with 3 or 4 formats that I thought were worth giving a go, and offered those formats online a couple times a week each, and did that for about 3 weeks to figure out which ones were going to stick. And after that, I ended up with really, after the long term, just one format class type that ended up kind of staying the course and working out over the long haul. And then after that, I, pretty quickly there, actually, our yoga teacher trainings began happening online. And so I was actually quite busy doing that. In fact, busier than I've ever been teaching yoga teacher trainings online when the Yoga Alliance opened all of that up for that to happen. And so my time was filled in very different ways. I had been teaching, every now and again, a yoga teacher training because it was something that I needed to travel for. And so I had to manage that with all of my other responsibilities. But with the onset of online training, I was doing online trainings quite a lot. And so that was new for me. And I loved doing that very much and still do. And then, maybe 6 or 8 months later, whenever it was, things started to open up, then slowly began returning to in-person classes. And still doing kind of a hybrid of both of those things now, some in person and some online.
Very nice, very nice. And I've actually heard that from a lot of instructors, is that they found themselves busier than before with being able to reach a bigger audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's always great for instructors, for the group fitness side of the industry, or even the PT side of the industry. The fact that they can grow their business and not be restricted by just one location. I think that that's fantastic. That has, honestly, when thinking about the last year and a half, that instructors being able to really push forward and not have to deal with maybe even some of the politics of working in a gym, we'll say, or even in the industry. That is one of my favorite parts, just to hear that instructors grew, made more money. I'm all about that life. And so I'm just going to throw that out there. But with teaching online now, I always find it very fascinating to ask the instructor, what kind of difficulties did they face at the beginning, and what are even some of the tips that they have for teaching online?
Let's see. Well, I would say it kind of depends on whether you're teaching like a live stream class or a pre-recorded class. Mm-hmm. In many ways, I think that the live classes are easier because you just go with it. And I think that that's a lot more natural, like you would be in a live setting. I think one of the hardest things for a lot of people to get used to is that teaching online and recording the class and feeling like it has to be perfect. And so, pushing the pause button, starting over. And I feel like people waste kind of a lot of time doing that. And honestly, I don't even think it serves much purpose. I find that classes are more authentic when you hop on and start as though there are people in the room and continue until the end, just like you normally would. And that has served me really well during this time to start the class and teach the whole thing and then hit the pause button. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. And I would say you learn a lot with just going with it. If you make a mistake, I don't even want to call it a mistake, but if you go and you're teaching a pre-recording, and let's say that something happens and you're like, oh, that wasn't perfect. And then you restart. I think you are almost hurting yourself, because you learn a lot through the process of doing virtual training. And oftentimes with instructors that I'm either giving advice for, or that I'm consulting for, or whatever it is, maybe it's my business. So I just tell them, you got to get started. You just got to go. You just have to start recording. And this could be the same for recording content for social media. You just have to go, because you learn so much about the whole process. Where's my camera go? Where's my lights, my microphone? But then also you learn a lot about yourself. Okay, I am better if I do it at this time, or I need to be more relaxed. I need to work on my pacing. Whatever that is, you learn a lot. And that's part of business. It's part of instructing. It's part of being in the industry. It's just getting that experience. And so that's a good one right there, just to put it out there for those that I know I'm just going to make a small joke here, that I have still seen people that are asking questions about, I'm thinking about going online. What? It's June. It's June 2021. You're just thinking now about going online. You might want to rethink that, but I'm joking with that. Please do go virtually if you can. But with doing on Zoom, you mentioned something that was quite interesting to me, with the differences if you have a class of people in front of you via Zoom, or if you're doing a pre-recorded. With your style of teaching, would you say that you will read the audience through Zoom and kind of tailor it that way?
You know what, Tyler? I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult to see everyone on Zoom that I find, even if there are live people, I usually teach exactly what I had planned, and I usually don't really stray from that much at all. Mm-hmm. Unless someone asks for something in particular. I do find that I just kind of stick with the whatever it was I had on my schedule and in my mind for that class. Definitely a lot easier to do the tailoring in person, or even, like in a one-on-one sort of setting. There's a lot to be said, I think, for that. One-on-one Zoom, I've done quite a bit of that as well, and really, really enjoy working with people in that way.
That's cool. That's great to hear. I can only imagine the benefits that you can get with that. And I would say, as an instructor, you probably had some growth with your teaching style, with having to teach through Zoom, and instead of being, especially something like yoga, where I'm sure that you will manually manipulate some people sometimes when you are with them. I'm sure you had to adjust your teaching style that way, right?
Yep, 100%. I would say overall, my cueing is much stronger, because if all you've got slower, then you figure out how to use them in a better way. And so, yeah, absolutely stronger with all of my cueing. I think even stronger with coming up with different themes and different focuses and things like that, doing my best to keep it interesting to students across the board and from week to week. Even more so, perhaps, than when, I was teaching all of my classes in person. It's certainly been an interesting journey all the way around.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. So a part of the podcast that I like to dive into is when we have individuals like yourself that are master trainers for an organization, is asking a little bit about the conferences that you guys attend and really what you guys are trying to do when you go and share your education and are talking about your guys' style of teaching. With YogaFit, when you guys go into a conference, because you obviously can't pack in 200 hours worth of content into a conference, what is it that you guys are usually trying to do? Is it sharing about a specialty, a course, or is it just giving a little bit of a taste so that the students want a little bit more? What do those classes usually look like?
Great question. There are quite a few things I think that we're doing as we come to different conferences. One is simply providing immediate benefit. You go to a conference, you attend a breakout session or an early morning class or something like that. What's the immediate benefit? How can this hour to 2 hour time frame provide something that makes you a better teacher? And so we're looking at that just immediate sort of payoff for people who show up. Additionally, we offer a few things at our booth at the expo, and that can be anything from cute tank tops to really deeper information about yoga teacher training, yoga therapy, and how that education journey can progress for whoever stops by. And then the other part is really, kind of what we were talking about earlier, building that sense of community, building network, getting to know people that are also interested in being a part of that support network, finding benefit there, and also people who want to contribute to that as well. And so there's, I think, a lot going on there for sure. Anytime there's a conference, and just, it's a lot of fun to get together with a bunch of people who are interested in the same sort of things.
That's great. That's great. I am new. I can't say I'm new to the conference because I've spoken at quite a few, but it's always something that I mention when I'm talking about conferences, is that new instructors should really attend, because you never know what you're going to uncover when you go. Right. And you might not be a fan of yoga when you go, but you can get a taste and you can see how it benefits your business or your style of teaching. And you're not, I'll say, giving your whole wallet away with something like going to a conference and being able to attend these sessions. And so that's great to hear with you guys' approach to them. Do you guys have any instructor trainings coming up?
Absolutely. We always have things coming up. Immediately, we actually have our own YogaFit conference coming up in Scottsdale, and it will be in person. And that is happening. I'm just checking the calendar here really quickly. It is July the 14th through the 18th. Mm-hmm. And so that one is our next most immediate in-person trainings available. And we have, I think, 10 or 12 different yoga teacher trainings happening at that conference.
Wow.
We're also offering about the same amount of trainings, 10 or 12 trainings every single week online. At least at this point, while online trainings are a thing. And so that's happening, my goodness, just about any day of the week you can imagine. And our full complement of trainings is available there, kind of rotating out throughout the weeks and the months. They're online. And then, of course, we will be at FitnessFest. We're doing a pre-con training, and I'll be leading the seniors training. And one of the things I love about the seniors training is it's not just for seniors. Mm-hmm. It really could be called like adaptations or modifications or variations class. Quite a bit of things that you can do with the chair, and not all of it makes poses easier. Some of it makes poses more challenging, which I think is always fun to realize. But it applies across the board to so many different people who are looking to bring movement back into their lives or bring movement into their lives after some sort of a challenge or physical, maybe even setback, those kind of things. And so I find that it works really well for people who want to teach those who maybe are coming off of an illness or who are dealing with sort of a chronic condition or things like that. All kinds of ways to adapt yoga to be accessible really to anyone who wants to practice it. And so that is happening pre-conference the day before FitnessFest gets started. And so I'd love to see anyone at that one too.
That's great. And those are held on Thursdays, the Thursday prior to the start. I believe your guys' pre-con, and please correct me if I'm wrong, does it start at 8 or 9?
I believe it starts at 8.
Okay. And is it a full 8-hour training?
It's from 8 to 6, and we'll take a break for lunch.
Perfect. That's great. So listeners, check that out for Fitness Fest coming up in September. It's just outside of Mesa. So almost, I can't say between where both of us live. I'm not going to give away where we live, but we both live outside of Phoenix. So check out the training, the pre-con training coming up in September. Jen, before we sign off here, can you give listeners some information on where to find you online, social media and such?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram, Jenn Tarrant Yoga, and also on LinkedIn, the same place. And I love to connect there. And I'm always keeping everybody updated with all the things I'm doing, both training wise, but also locally. I love to do classes, yoga therapy groups, and workshops. And so you'll see all of those things popping up on my social media pretty much on a weekly basis. I've got something going on all the time. Great stuff you shared today, Jen. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast, sharing about yourself, sharing about YogaFit, and talking about really all the stuff that people should know if they want to dive into the world of yoga. So thank you again. Thanks, Tyler.